Drinking water all day at your tournaments and still feel tired? What if we could hydrate you from the cellular level? At BioWorks Mobile IV Service, our licensed professionals understand what it takes to get through a long day of exercise. We use all natural vitamins to increase hydration, recovery, and prolonged athletic endurance. Help your team get to the podium. Book now by texting the number on your screen or calling today. Call 972-948-8207 to book now. That's 972-948-8207. BioWorks. Hydrate, win, repeat.
In the Pits is partnered with Podrunners Union. Podrunners Union breaking news. Super limited Union Tech tees and, for the first time, Fiesta medals are available online at podrunnersunion.org. Use offer code PITS for 10% off of your order. Stealing pods for undeserving teams. It's a living. In the Pits is partnered with XTPL Events. The Extreme Tournament Paintball League is a series put on by the Lukow family of Paintball Fit fame that gives the opportunity for players to learn and grow together as a team. 3-man, Challengers and Champions X-Ball, Draft Mech X-Ball, and even Youth 3v3. There's something for everyone at XTPL. Not to mention prize tosses, raffles, and the infamous paintball munching contest. Events happen throughout the year, and the prizes never disappoint. Sign up for an XTPL event today on PB Leagues. In the Pits is partnered with Hydra. Designed by players, for players, you can outfit yourself in Hydra gear from head to toe. Have confidence that when you make a purchase from Hydra, you are purchasing a well-tested and well-thought-out product, trusted by several top teams, including first-place semi-pro team, PaintballFit.com. I personally recommend their Hydra Black knee pads. Purchases over $100 receive free shipping. Head to hydra.fit to browse their selection and discover the Hydra mentality. In the Pits is partnered with BEM Wraps. Behind every mask is a unique and creative player. Tap into it when you order your next custom headpiece. Their Build-A-Band lets you communicate with them one-on-one to make your order just the way you want, all the way down to the color of the stitch. Check out their Instagram at BEMWraps for drops and build videos of them working on orders. They offer very competitive pricing, so reach out today to get started on your own one-of-a-kind headpiece. In the Pits is partnered with Mariachi Águilas de Oro. Based in Austin and servicing the surrounding areas, these Golden Eagles will bring life to any event you are having, from birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, corporate events, or even a simple performance to enjoy. Guillermo Padilla, one of their trumpet players, is also a member of the Texas paintball scene. Visit them on Facebook and Instagram to check out some of their past performances, or give them a call to book them for your event today. In the Pits is partnered with Compete. Compete is a Texas-based brand by Jell Stewart of professional team AC Diesel that provides custom jerseys, pants, headbands, straps, tech shirts, and any other soft goods to help individuals and teams compete at the highest level. Support Texas Paintball and message Compete on Facebook or Instagram and mention In the Pits Podcast for 10% off your entire order. In the Pits is partnered with 71 Designs, owned and operated by veteran Wade Martin, and partnered with fellow Texas brand Compete. 71 Designs can take your ideas for soft goods, merchandise, and casual wear and make them a reality. Message 71 Designs on Facebook or Instagram to get started today. In the Pits is partnered with Get Dat Shot. Get Dat Shot is now scheduling photo and reels coverage for teams competing in the upcoming NXL Lone Star Major. Head to GetDat_shot on Facebook or Instagram to check out his previous work, or to shoot him a message to secure your media coverage today. In the Pits is partnered with Paintball Kumite. Paintball Kumite is a program designed by Colt Roberts of professional team San Antonio X Factor to take paintball players of all ages, experience levels, and skill groups and mold them into champions. The program breaks the game down into small, easy-to-learn sessions designed to help you master the fundamentals so that you can elevate your game. Newcomers to the program get a free 1-hour introductory class when mentioning In the Pits. To sign up for a class, message at Paintball Kumite on Instagram. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 99 of In the Pits Paintball Podcast. This podcast is focused on everything that has to do with the paintball scene here in Texas, from professional players and teams to new divisional programs, local tournament series, field owners, Texas-based brands, even photographers and videographers. Every week, we'll have a short and sweet episode with a new topic and a new special guest. I'm Christian Dallas Smith. I'm a player for the Texas Titans, and this episode we are going in the pits with Joe Barrett, pro player for Los Angeles Infamous and host of the Paintball Passport podcast. Joe, how are you doing this evening?
Doing very good. I appreciate you having me on the show. And I've been looking forward to this since we chatted about it. So I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think we definitely have a lot to talk about, not just with this event that is not yet resolved, but also about everything that's going on with you right now with your podcast and with NXL Europe happening this weekend, as well as what's to come with some of the rumors that we've been hearing about Atlantic City.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot to cover. We were kind of chatting about it a little bit pre-show. So if there's anything you want to get right into it, I got all night, so we could go deep.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So let's start out just kind of getting some background information on you. So this question is brought to us by XTPL Event. So for those listening that maybe don't know about you, how long have you been involved in the tournament paintball scene?
Oh man, it's been a long time. Actually, right now, 2024 is just about 2 decades in national paintball. I started my NPPL journey right around then. I've been playing tournament paintball since 2001 or 2. It was like right at the end of the hyperball era becoming the airball era.
All right. So, man, 2 decades in the sport. That's a long time. So, like, throughout that time, what are some of the teams that you've played for?
I have a track record, before getting to the pro ranks, I was kind of known for like being one of those guys that would jump team to team to team as a free agent for PSP, NPPL, CXBL, a host of regional leagues, blah 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 blah. So I've been through over 100 teams now, but like notable ones that everyone would know. I guess the best way would be to go backwards. So currently, Los Angeles Infamous. That's a big franchise name. Before that, San Diego Aftermath, also legendary team name. Before that, 4 years with Sacramento DMG when they were pro. Before that, Tampa Bay Damage. Before that, New York Extreme. Before that, I was with, Static was a big Florida semi-pro team. Syracuse Rhythm, which is also Rochester Rhythm. That was like a really dominant team out of the Northeast from the AXBL. It's a Buddy Bauer team, so it's comprised a lot of the old OG Titman Effect guys, and Shockwave Canada, which was Canada's top team back in those days. So those would be all, I'd say, like the known U.S. teams.
So exactly what I was about to get to was that those are just covering the teams that you've played for in the U.S. I know, like, you're a particularly big traveler, so like what are some of the other, I guess, maybe more notable teams from outside of North America?
Yeah, so I've played on quite a few different teams from other countries now, and from a lot of different countries. Seemed like every time I went to Europe or Asia, it was a different team from a different one of those countries. But the really notable ones would be Kiev United from Ukraine, and I love those guys. That was I think the last time I played in Europe, honestly. Before that, I was with 5-Star Lydia, another well-known team. That's like the Anthrax fully funded team out of Spain. I was with KTM, which is like a fully KTM's like the motorcycle company. It's like a fully funded and sponsored Asia team from Malaysia. And the woman who owns KTM, Faz, actually was a player and owner of that team, so she would play out like alongside you. And I was also with New Zealand's only international team and probably their top team, Ballistic Unit. down in Mexico. I've played with Scorpions and won a few Mexican tournaments with them, and I've also played with TJ Bastards. And last year we won the Mexican series title.
And some big names there from all over the world. So,
Yeah.
and just to back up a little bit, I know you said you've been playing tournaments since 2001. How old are you?
I'm 33 now.
Oh, so you would have been in when you were 11, 10 years old, something like that?
Yeah. I started playing paintball at 10 years old, the first time you're, legally able to. Very quickly went from, the classic in the woods birthday party thing to, ironically, another birthday party at an indoor field called Tsunami, which closed only a year or two later in Buffalo, New York. But yeah, I was 10 when I started, and within 1 year, I was already hooked and playing like 3-mans, then 5-mans, and then like the Northeastern regional leagues like the NYPS, NYPL. Those later became the AXBL, which was like a very large multi-regional league, and then that eventually died in 2009.
I mean, I love the youth connection there, and how like youth paintball is kind of exploding right now. Especially, I know this was it this past weekend or 2 weekends ago, where the Team USA U16 U19 tryouts, and we featured a couple of players from Texas who are like 12, 13 years old going up against like players that are playing Division II semi-pro, like guys on New York Wrecking Crew, and like beating them out of some spots.
That's awesome. I love that because I have this conversation with people pretty frequently. Back when I was a kid playing, there was no U16 division, like there was kind of, if at your local field, there might be little amateur tournaments, and there was this thing called the IAO, the International Amateur Open, where you wouldn't get like pro or high caliber teams. But like either way, if you were playing regionally or nationally, like I was, 11, 12, 13, and all the guys on my team were like 18 to 35, and you were only on that team because they needed a young rookie to like run to the snake. But yeah, there wasn't kids divisions, and I like kids divisions. I think it's good nowadays for the current culture and climate of sports to keep kids in it so they don't feel like they're just getting outclassed by adults. But also, I really enjoyed, being in that time where it's like, hey, in order to take a spot, you have to play against grown ass men, and you're probably going to lose more than you win, and you're probably going to ride the bench that first season, but like, you're going to have to get really good to take their spots because they're like fully grown adults with, athletic bodies, and you're just a little kid. So I thought it made you have to elevate your intelligence game and your gun skills quite a bit faster, just because trial by fire, And so when I hear stories about this, like kids in Texas that, sure, they're probably on, the USA U18, U16 teams, but they're also on those teams where they go play in D2. I bet you those kids are really good because they're playing against D2 paintball players.
Oh yeah. I mean, look at, I think a prime example was last year's Team USA U19, where they won the U19 division on, I think, Friday, and then they turned around and played semi-pro in NXL Europe and won that as well under the Stars and Stripes name. So like these kids are legit.
Yeah, that was sick. And honestly, I'm happy that happened. Like I expect that because at 18, 19, you're kind of an adult, like you might not have a sweet job yet or live on your own, but like, come on, you're not like a peewee anymore. So like you should be also playing in whatever division fits your skill caliber rather than just only dunking on kids in the couple U19 tournaments a year.
Definitely. All right. So I know you said a little bit where you're like, as soon as you turned 10, you were like a birthday party kid, but what was it that got you interested in playing paintball to begin with?
When were you born? Let me ask you that.
96.
Okay, so you're a 90s kid. Yeah, I mean, I was born in 90, and so I grew up, before 10 playing games like GoldenEye and on N64. And I loved shoot 'em up games. There was never really a violent bone in my body, but I was always very good at first person shooters and like combat strategy. And I don't know, I liked action movies. I kind of really understood like the tactics of, creating a front, flanking, blah, 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 like the simple strategy of war. And so I wasn't really looking to play paintball necessarily, but in that time period, like I felt like everyone's dad eventually when you hit 10 years old went, all right, here's your first paintball gun, or I'm going to bring you out to the woods and you're going to use a bunch of our crappy pump guns or Titmans. And it was kind of like this coming of age thing, like now rather than playing toy guns or make believe, you're going to come out with your dad and a couple of his older friends and a couple of your younger buddies, and time to become a man, like time to like, hunt each other and like get that adrenaline pump. And the first time I did it, it just hooked me so hard. I was like, this is amazing. I'm already like pretty okay at this. Like I'm stealthy. I'm a pretty good shot. I grew up shooting real guns in 22. So like the shot thing was easy for me, the gun skill. And, just played that in the woods for a while. But what really hooked me like the paintball that we know, like not just being a weekend warrior wearing camo, was when I went to that birthday party at that indoor field. They had these magazines on the front counter you could just take. They had 888 paintball catalogs. It was like this little catalog thing with just like angels and autocockers and stuff. And then they had, must have been like PB2X or one of those old defunct magazines. And took it on the way home and I couldn't stop reading it. And I was like, whoa, this is that other version. Like everybody that I was playing with was wearing hoodies and, using crappy rental guns. But I saw a few of those guys in the open play with like the colorful markers and just like this really cool looking gear. And when I read the articles and was like, oh, this isn't just a recreational thing. There's like a whole sports tournament side to this. And then I would read these early articles of like, Matty Marshall in his area or his era, not only writing about the tournament, but also writing about like we're in Spain playing a tournament. And then me and the guys went backpacking for 3 days and ran from the bulls and blah, blah, blah. And right there, I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my entire life. 100%.
Love it. Yeah. With the whole GoldenEye thing, for me, it was a little bit later than that, but I was, well, what was it called? I was a SOCOM US Navy SEALs kid. That was me. So
PlayStation 1 or
PS2.
Computer?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That was a sick game. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That was for me. So this question is brought to us by Pod Runners Union. So throughout your entire time in tournament paintball, what are some things that have changed in the scene, either for better or for worse?
Man. I'll say, I didn't start playing tournaments in the woods, although I have played those. That would have been like the 80s and 90s, but I've seen a lot of iterations of the game. Like, uh, I really enjoyed Hyperball, and I think that change from Hyperball to Airball could be for the worse or better, depending how you look at it. Because as far as the logistics of creating a tournament, going to Airball was a great choice because it's hard probably to find enough really good Hyperball places that could host a tournament as big as they've grown to, right? Back then it was, I don't know, maybe a big tournament was like 50 teams, so that wasn't that many people there. Now it's what, 500 teams at NXL? You couldn't find a field with that many awesome Hyperball fields for that tournament. And also, it's really hard to fit an entire field, let alone 10 of them, of Hyperball giant corrugated tubing into semis and drive them around the country to set up a national tournament. So Airball really solves a lot of that, right? But on the flip side of that, I really loved Hyperball, especially like 10-man and even 7-man, because there were no bounce shots. So like it was, to me, it was like the gentleman's game. Like if you had good gun skills, a guy had to shoot you out of your bunker. He had to actually snap out and kill you out of your spot. Whereas now a lot of times you're tucked in and those bounce shots rip in from the side and you're just dead. And you're like, man, I wasn't even exposed, but there was nothing you could do there, right? So I did like that there were no bounce shots, and it was more of a, if I have good gun skills, I can either kill this guy or I could put him in and run and gun my whole way through this gap to the next bunker, rather than just kind of like what the current game has become. So that'd be an easy one. I mean, I could talk a lot of different things, but the bunkers could be good or bad. You could say the guns could be good or bad because back in the day, I really liked the customization of guns. Like when you got a gun, you were like, I still got to get the CP reg and the barrel. And I don't know if you did all that, but man, like I remember my early Timmies and Angels and Shockers, and there was never another gun at the field that looked like it. Whereas now, what does everybody have on your team?
Everybody on my team has a Project CS3, so I guess we're a little bit different there. But
But yeah, true, but they probably all look similar, right? Or like most guys all have a stock black CS3 or a red dye gun, or you don't really need to put anything on it or put your own touch into it because these guns come so perfect out of the box. Now, the flip side of that is back then, it was like the arms race era. So, like, sometimes you might have been a better team than that other team downfield. But if you didn't have the right boards or technology and they could all shoot 25 balls a second off the break or sustained because they were bouncing guns, and you were still shooting like an early electro or maybe even an autococker, like you just had no chance. So I like that all the guns became more, you could say, uniform and capped, where now at least that's a variable that isn't there, and it's like, okay, we all have the same thing. Basketball, it's always the same ball. So now it's, are you better than me? Not just, is your equipment better than my equipment?
yeah, definitely the standardization there has been nice. It was definitely nice to be playing in the playoffs in Dallas, where it was just like, at the box we were all ankle deep in water, and good luck if you're trying to dive anywhere. But like having our players being able to dive into spots and their guns still work, whereas I'm sure like at least maybe even as soon as 10 years ago that might not have always been the case.
Correct. Yeah. Oh my God, dude. Those early tournaments, if you went to one of those really rainy ones or muddy ones and you just had, all you had was like the, what are they called? Poppet Intimidators, or, I don't know, like a freestyle or a carnivore, or like any of those touchier guns. Angels were very like, maintenance heavy. Dude, if you dove into something bad, you were fucked. And hopefully you had a full 15 guy X ball roster. But by the end of that match, you went from 15 working guns to like hopefully 5 or 6 guns that made it through. So yeah, I don't know if you played in that era, but dude, it was rough.
No, I didn't start until 2015, which actually does lead us into our next question. I started in 2015 playing NCPA with the Texas Longhorns. That was my very first team, and you also came through NCPA in 2011 and 2012. You played with the University Buffalo Bulls, and you had already played a whole lot of tournaments at that point, but NCPA also like brought you as far as I can see on your APPA profile, your first wins on that. So what was your NCPA experience like while you were involved?
Oh yeah, that's a good question and brings back a lot of nostalgia. I miss college ball. I loved it. I remember playing against the Texas team very frequently. I was in college 2008 to 12. And those would be my first wins that are shown on APPA, because if you played in regional leagues, the AXBL, whatever, NAPS, all of those ones, they were unranked. They weren't APPA registered. So I'd already learned how to win like tournaments and even like several series, summer leagues, indoor leagues, winter leagues, blah, blah, blah. But like I had not had anything showing on my like record online. And yeah, that was a really special win. Like honestly, I don't care about the APPA showing wins or whatever, but that college win was very cool because when I first came to UB, it was just a paintball club, and it was like a couple of guys that like to get together and play with Titmans in the woods. And I chose UB because I was like, okay, I have a scholarship to get here, but this is the one SUNY State school in New York that's near me that also has a paintball club. So me and some of these guys could take this and make it an NCAA collegiate team rather than club, and we'll get our own office and we'll get a budget and grants to play more paintball. And that was great to me because I was like, sweet, I'm going to get to play a lot more free tournament paintball, and that'll be practice for my actual, PSP and NPPL teams at the time. And the first year we sucked because they're all just learning how to finally play paintball. The second year we were starting to do good, and like we would even win a bunch of the local and regional leagues, like just the New York or Pennsylvania teams would show up. But that third year, 2011, we really started to play the same way that like a semi-pro team would play, and we just beat the living shit out of everybody the whole year. Like we won every tournament we went to, and then we won the collegiate championship. I think we only lost like a point the whole time, and it was in the finals game. But we, along the way to finals, we knocked out like a team with the Boom guys on it. We knocked out Omaha State, which was all the vicious kids at the time. We knocked out the Huskies. They had some good players that played on like TNN in the AXBL. Like we were just beating all the teams that people thought were going to win. And everybody was just like, who the hell is this team out of freaking snowy Buffalo, New York? So yeah, I mean, that was a really a special time and a very cool team to be on.
Yeah, it's crazy how like everybody's NCPA experience, they always remember, oh yeah, this Vicious played and that team was the stacked team. Or like in my case, it was, oh, VCK all went to Texas A&M and they were the stacked team whenever I played. And it's like all of the memories are just like, hey, it's technically not even D5. It's more like beginner, and you're going up against guys that are currently in the professional division. Like my first experiences were going up against Ryan Hall and Devin Stewart.
Yep. I was going to say, I figured you probably played those guys because I remember they would talk about that VCK team being a super dominant college team. And it's because what you said, a lot of these college teams are like guys who've never played, and they're like, oh man, we could just do this thing and a college will pay for it. And you're playing basically a D5 first year team. And in the nationals, there's like 150 teams there, but I'd say 110 of them are like that. Mm-hmm. And it's only that last like 30 or 40 teams that are like, okay, this is like a D3 team that's competitive. And then there's the top 5-10 teams that have like pro guys throughout them that just happen to be in school, and that one single pro guy will go out there and shoot the other 5 guys point after point after point.
Yeah, definitely. And not to say that we didn't have that guy, because we did have Nathan Robertson at our school, at least for 2 of those years. So we had one guy, unfortunately, 4 pros is greater than 1 pro whenever we played against them. So yeah, in the chat here, we have one of our sponsors, Brandon Ortega from BEMRAPS. He asked, going back to our Hyperball conversation, he just says, have you ever had the magic ball curve through the ridges on Hyperball?
Oh my God, dude. 100%. Like when you had the tall double stack tubes, and they're sealed, but they are at the exact same spot. So like there's this, and it's a pretty big tube, right? So more times than not, nothing gets through because the ball is curving downwards or it's breaking off barely off an edge, and you're getting sprayed to pieces through the middle. But occasionally the right angle from the right other bunker, the ball would perfectly squeeze through the gap without touching a side, like a game of Operation, right? And it would clack you. And you'd look over to ref and you'd try to tell them that was through the bunker, And they're like, nope, get out. You're hit. There's a hit on you. Get out. And you were out. And it was just like, God damn it, dude. That was fate right there. I wasn't going to win either way.
Love it. All right. So another question brought to us by BEMRAPS. So you're native to Buffalo, New York. However, you've played for teams from all over the world. We've talked about just the ones in the U.S., like Tampa Bay Damage, Sacramento DMG, Aftermath, Infamous. You've also played for Team USA. You've played in the Mexican X-Ball League, NXL Europe. You've played in Super Sevens in Australia, in Malaysia. So you're no stranger to traveling for the game of paintball, and you at least on APPA, you're averaging around 10 events a season, which I'm sure whenever you add like the Super Sevens and Asia, the stuff that's not on PB leagues, that number I'm sure goes up. So as far as how you're able to fund all of this, like how much of your expenses are getting covered by the teams that you play on versus you having to pay out of pocket?
That's a good question. So as a pro player, you get covered. Like that's kind of like part of the deal. It's really maybe the biggest perk to going pro. I mean, there are some guys that can make a pretty good career. You're not making lawyer money like that, but you can make a career out of paintball and live comfortably. I've had years where when I was playing enough leagues that I was getting hired to come in and play and doing enough clinics, I was able to pay for all my living expenses on just that. So I was able to, survive off paintball. But the best perk, hands down, is that when you go pro, if people notice you, whether through your social media, obviously your performance, they're not going to pick up somebody who never gets played because they don't see them. But if you're a positive person and you're showing that you're trying to like spread the game, teams generally reach out to you in some form or fashion and go, "Hey, we'd like you to come to this country to play this event," right? And you say, "All right, well, what's the deal? What are you offering?" And at the very least, even when you're a young rookie pro player, they'll cover all your travel expenses. They're going to get your hotel room, or you're just in the rental house with them. You don't have to worry about your rental car and like that. They'll pick it up. And normally they'll even like cover all your food. And oftentimes, if you stay like the week before or after, if this is those guys' home country, they want to like really show you a warm welcome and show you their country. So that might be the best perk. Like, I get paid to play another place now, but even when I wasn't, they would take me to like whatever, like scuba diving or, hike the local mountain or just like a plethora of different unique experiences. And it was like this all inclusive dream vacation. So to answer the question, as a pro player, your expenses are covered. And normally you walk away with some cash in your pocket or a gun or whatever. And if you bring or sell all your jerseys and gear that you brought with you before you leave, now you make extra money for like that week or two that you stay after. And that's just your money to like play around with and backpack. But even before this, before going pro, I would still go to these things. And it would be out of my pocket, like maybe the team would cover all the paintball expenses, but I would have to like tell them like, "Hey, I can be there," and I'd buy my flight. Right. And so in that way, you just have to be like, I mean, there is no secret magic way. If you're not well off on money, which I never was, you just have to be like good at being frugal and budgeting and, finding the cheapest flight, being okay with long layovers, and, just being a minimalist when you're there. Because I'd rather be there and do it the kind of cheap way and not eat a ton of fancy food or whatever than not be there, right? And that was always my way, is like, hey, if I get over there, that's good enough for me. I'll figure out a way to make it happen.
For sure. And so as far as like I know what you were saying as far as like social media and other ways that you were making yourself visible. What are some of those tips or strategies that you use to maximize like your opportunities? Like, did you have your own, like, were you creating your own YouTube videos or highlights or anything like that? Or what were your strategies to get yourself on the map there?
What's funny is I was never a content guy. Even now I do a podcast, right? Like I don't consider myself a content guy because I'm not good at the whole like, subscribe, blah blah blah. I'm not really, I do it because I enjoy it. I'm not really like trying to promote it enough or like monetize it or whatever. So I never really like tried to do those things back then. But like after the college era and like when I was playing on some semi-pro teams, I did make this one video series on YouTube called Paintballology 101. And it was basically just like the basic fundamentals of the chess game. And if you search it on YouTube, it's still there. It's like me in some empty college classroom with a whiteboard. My buddy George, who's one of the pro refs now, he was filming it. And I just went through lessons of like, how to turn the field, how to close on people while keeping them contained in the pocket, the right and wrong decisions, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that necessarily got me any clinics or any of these like traveling opportunities, but maybe people watched it and went, "Oh, okay, he's not just going to come and play for us. He's going to also teach us." And I think that's something that foreign teams are looking for, is they could hire anybody to be like just a mercenary, right? Like they could hire some young, fast snake front player and be like, "Go snake off break every time, shoot as many people as you can." But that doesn't help them in the long term. And that's why guys still want to bring back Ryan Greenspan and Marcelo and them, is because they know when they bring you to the tournament, they're kind of also getting a clinic combined in with you being a player in that actual event. and they're going to get to carry those lessons that you're talking about in meetings and scouting and whatever with them for after you leave. And that's really what my purpose is like, hey, I want you guys to be this good or continue getting better when I'm not here. So we're going to have a good time and we're going to try to win this tournament, and I'm going to put my all into this, but I'm also going to leave you with all these lessons. And I think that is what is my biggest tip, is if you can just be like a teacher as well and like try to pay forward what you're learning, then the guys at a lower level than you will go, okay, let's grab that guy. He'll teach us.
Love it. Yeah, that's definitely, especially with that big of an investment, flying over an American pro player and covering all of their expenses, not just for the game, but their logistics. Like that is definitely a big investment per event. So getting a lasting return definitely makes sense for those guys. So out of all of the different places that you've played in, like has that been the experience where you're bringing, like, either doing a clinic or you're bringing something where the team is becoming better even after you leave?
100%. That's really what I aim to do. Like whether I'm playing the tournament or like recently I've started getting brought to places just to coach, because they're like, hey, it's a Division 3 cap. We can't guest you on, but we'd like to have you coach us. And I've been doing more of that down in like the Central America parts, and I enjoy it. But like I always let them know when they reach out, because a lot of times they want to know. They're like, okay, what are you offering? They know they want you to play, right? But they're like, tell us a little bit about you. And the big things that I tell them is like, I'm going to stay with you the whole time. We're going to become friends because I enjoy like the socializing and like allowing myself to be a network resource for you. And you could reach out to me, after we've become friends and learned to play with each other, even when I'm not there, and be like, hey, what do you think about this layout? Give us a tip on how you'd play it, right? But beyond that, I don't want to go somewhere and just be like half-ass involved. Like just play the game or just coach the game, walk away. So if I'm coaching, I have normally a team owner or their coach next to me, and I just show them how I'm coaching. That way, when I'm not there for their local tournament, they see like, I see why he's calling that play because of what they did last time. And if I'm playing, after the game, I'll scout the next, teams in our bracket or whatever. And I'll also typically scout the team that I think we're going to run into on Sunday, like whatever the best few teams are there that I know I'm going to run into late in the finals. And I'll break down in the meetings throughout the day, like we're just clocked in the whole day, right? Like I just expect them to be serious. Maybe not pro serious, because a lot of these guys, they're paying to do this as a vacation. They want to have a good time too. But like I try to bring that level of like, hey, just because we're done with this match doesn't mean we shouldn't be over at that field watching those teams, right? And then hopefully when I've left the tournament, they not only understand a little bit more of the on-field chess game, but they get some of the mentality where they're like, oh yeah, rather than just lucking out occasionally and hoping the layout's right and we maybe win a tournament here and there, we could be doing more off the field stuff. We could be doing more preparation. We could be, I make them drink water every night, a certain amount, right? Like, it's just all those things where it's like, guys, I'm telling you, all these little things are adding 1% to that big picture. So that if we do all these correctly, then all you have to think about is your on the field stuff. Because I don't like when I get to a team and they don't care about all that stuff. And now on the field, everything is it's affected, and it's like exacerbated, because it's like somebody comes off after only a point or two and they're like, I need one. You're like, why do you need one? They're like, oh, I'm dehydrated. Oh, because you weren't drinking any water last night. Instead, you were drinking beer all night, right? Or they're like, I'm like, why did you lose that point? And they're like, I ran out of paint. I ran out of pods. I'm like, how'd you run out of pods? And they're like, well, we only brought 30 pods in the bag. Like this is really a problem you run into with like, I'd say D3 teams and lower, especially in like Mexico, Central America, South America. You run into these little problems where it's like, if I can bring them that stuff too, and hopefully they're writing these down in notes and all that, then the next tournament, they're going to be like, wow, that tournament was so much easier. Like, yeah, we got a little better, but like also everything was smoother running because we took care of all the off-field things.
Yeah, for sure. Pits can definitely win, or more often than not lose your tournaments if not done properly. Um,
Yeah.
so for anybody out there who's maybe looking to do a little bit more traveling for the game of paintball, do you have any tips for them to help them start like getting those initial opportunities and also maximizing the ones that are out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're, semi-pro, pro, this will be a little easier. So I'll just talk to you divisional guys that are like, hey, I've always wanted to play in that MXL league on the beach in Mexico, or I want to play you know, whatever, the Spain event for NXL Europe. You need to put yourselves out there, and you know, that's a lesson in anything. Is you have to be uh, okay with rejection, okay with failure. It's just like when you're trying to start a new company or you're like trying to go after your dream girl. Like, if you never do it because you're worried about that shit, guess what? You're never doing it. But if you're willing to try, knowing that it's not just going to work the first time, I promise you it'll work, right? It's a numbers game, and it's being okay with the discomfort at first, and eventually you navigate and learn how to do it better, and then you become successful at it. So reach out to those teams. If you're a D3 guy and there's a D4 team, and on their APPA you see like they're not a full roster, you're like, oh, okay, they only have 5 or 6 guys. You're allowed to have 10. Maybe reach out to them and be willing, be humble and be willing to take care of your own stuff. Because I took care of all my own stuff the very first few, right? Until those teams or those players or owners in those countries started becoming familiar with me, and they're like, okay, we'll pay for that guy. We'll bring him back because he's good when he comes here, right? But for those first times, I'd reach out to people when I wasn't pro yet, and I'd be like, hey, I'm looking to get to this event. This is something I've always wanted to do. I'll be a great teammate, and beyond that, I'm willing to cover my flight and my fair share of the event cost. If there's 80 of you, put me in, divide me by 8. This is my skill set. I don't know if you need blank or blank, a back center guy or a snake front player, but whatever you do best, reach out to a team and be like, do you need a snake front player? I'd love to come. I'd love to meet you guys, and I will be a great teammate. Like, team first. Because if you show up and you're only worried about playing and you don't reiterate, or you just become an asshole or whatever, you're not playing good and their attitude rubs off, guess what? You're never going to get invited back by that team, and probably not to that league. So attitude is a big thing too. And if you are, I mean, it's easier nowadays because you have social media, you have YouTube, you have Instagram, Facebook. I think people would see my Facebook back then and be like, oh, okay, he's good, but he seems like a positive guy. Like, he's always talking about enjoying the culture and seeing all the stuff and getting to know the local people. So we know if we bring this guy, he's going to be a good time, right? Whereas if all your posts are negative or pessimistic or whatever, it's kind of like a resume. And now those jobs that are looking at you, they're actually teams. They're going to go, we could probably get another player who's as good and is going to be more of a good time and will gel with us better.
For sure. All right. So let's see in the chat, Lasro Lopez, who you might have heard the name back when you appeared on Mafia's podcast. He's a regular on his show as well. He says that he can offer you free all you can drink hard AF seltzer to coach Austin Oni.
I appreciate the offer. I am not a seltzer guy. Every time I've ever drank in seltzers, it's like you can drink 10 of them and not really get much more of a buzz, and then I just have a headache. So I'll have to pass.
Sorry, Scott. All right. So this next question is brought to us by Mariachi Águilas de Oro. So you also host your own podcast, the Paintball Passport, which focuses on this whole travel life that comes with playing paintball events. So tell us a little bit more about your show and what inspired you to begin it.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell, because it's been a reoccurring, I guess, topic throughout this conversation, is I fucking love the traveling part of paintball. I love it just as much as the actual game or art of paintball, like the chess game, the combat, the warrior part of it, right? I like that. But Man, I've always been a people person, and I've always been interested in other places and cultures. And so I am just obsessed with like the fact that you can play a sport that allows you to do that and really see like almost everywhere. You know, like the only continent I've not been to so far is Africa, I guess, and it's only because of paintball. Like I've never been anywhere else in the world except for when I had a gear bag to play paintball. So I always thought I would even say it in conversation for the last 15 years, like paintball, when people ask me, is kind of also my passport to the world. Like it's really my key that unlocked like this lifestyle. And I guess I didn't want to be a podcaster because we already have all these great podcasts, you know, like we have your show, and before this we've had Play the Game, Spick and Span. I've been listening to Carl Markowski on Playing On podcasts forever. And now we have more other small new podcasts. Like we got Moffat's show. We have Coach's Corner. We have all these really good shows that I think they do enough for us for like capturing a player's story or like the meta of the game that's being played or whatever. So there I don't really need to repeat those things, but like whenever me and like the group of pros that travel get together or we're hanging out or whatever, you know, it's like the Sunday after party at a term or whatever. Oh yeah, I just saw you went to Colombia recently, and we share these crazy stories. Like some of them are epic, some of them are dangerous, some of them are, you know, probably not ones that you share with everybody. But I'm just like, God, dude, like the lifestyle that me and like these buddies get to live, like I'm so grateful for because when I hang out with my friends at work and they tell me their stories of over the weekend or summer, they're just not really that cool, you know? Like it's just no offense to them. That might be what they love, but it just really highlighted like how special our lifestyle is. And I was like, honestly, I thought by now somebody else would like fill this niche. Like I really thought that somebody would see that opportunity and go, "Ah, that's where I'm going to insert myself." And I thought it would be like a, you know, a retired pro or like a longtime veteran or whatever, but nobody did it. And I remember having a conversation with a few different like veteran legends that I respect a lot. And at the same time, I heard on Marcelo's show. He had Matty Marshall on, and that guy was talking, which he always does, about like, what are you doing to like give back to the sport or like to put more eyes and ears on it? And then Oliver Lang's episode was like the same thing, like, you know, like how he finally like used his, I guess, status or like his like certified aura in the game to give back something that he knew would work, you know, and that was like Hormesis and the duel and all that stuff, right? And so all of this was kind of like spiraling in my head at the beginning of this year, like in Christmas time coming into the new year. And I was like, God damn it, I don't want to be a content creator, but like this is something I would do for fun anyways. Like I love talking to my friends and sharing my stories, and I love hearing their stories. So if all I have to do is buy a bunch of like camera equipment and subscribe to a few host channels, and it means I get to finally record those conversations while it feels like me and my friends are pretty much just hanging out on the show, then cool. Now other people can hear those stories and like authentically the first time, where it's not like it's retold and they're like getting tired of sharing that story the 50 times. And now it's just like, cool. My homie, you know, Kirill just got to share with me like his favorite travel stories. And he secondhand got to share those with everybody else who wants to hear those same unique, cool stories. So that was like kind of the, you know, the basis of why it happened.
Yeah, I was listening to the Kirill episode earlier today. It was very interesting, like hearing the Russian perspective on all of that. Like I think the thing that stood out to me the most was like how I think the conversation was how Americans don't really travel all that much, but his kind of perspective on that, well, he was like, well, it's because America is a great place to live. And so you don't really have all that much incentive. I was like, well, that's definitely a new way of thinking about it than I've ever heard of.
Yeah. I totally agree. I thought his perspective was very unique because he's right. Um, you could pretty much spend a whole lifetime traveling in just the US and you're still in that first world comfort where you're at least like
Mm.
okay, I have, running water that I can drink right out of the sink. I have a flushing toilet. There's nothing that's like gonna culture shock me or like weird me out or like, maybe rub like a more high maintenance person or like kids or a wife the wrong way. So you can just travel around and this country has every type of geography. It's very beautiful and vast and different depending on what region you're in. And all 50 of the states feel very different. So if you spend your whatever 2 weeks vacation time a year just traveling to a new state or a couple cities or like California alone took me 4 whole years to see because it's so
Mhm.
big and so different everywhere, right? Then yeah, I guess you don't have to worry about traveling the world. But I thought that was a unique perspective of his because in my eyes, I was always like, I want to see other places not because I don't have to leave the US, but because I want how different it is, right? Like I want to like know what it was like coming up in a place that doesn't have the comforts of running water or like doesn't have electricity. You know what I mean? Like I really want to experience maybe not necessarily like move there and live there forever, but I really want to just like immerse myself in that and get a better understanding of like okay, everyone is not raised with the same opportunities and experiences. And in this way, you can see how we are all much more similar, but like that person, you would have been that same person if you were raised in those same conditions, right? And then it gives you more of like a global connectedness and then you can like spread your empathy further and like try to have better understanding of other people because now you've been like, ah, I lived that situation. Now I understand why they feel this way about this or why their customs are around that. And yeah, it's made me like feel a lot more like need to be kind and understanding to everyone. And at the same time, it's also given me a much greater level of like gratitude and appreciation for like what I do have or like the situation that I was born in, which wasn't great at all compared to like many people on their scale of what is good or bad here in the United States. But after going to certain places, I'm like, oh my God, even if I never got out of that situation, which,
Mhm.
I've improved my life steadily, but even if I've never gotten out of that like horrible, like, whatever, slummy neighborhood in Niagara Falls, and I was just working part time at McDonald's forever, that still was much more luxurious than some of the stuff that I've seen now. Much less dangerous, much more, uh, you know, beautiful environment, and much more, um, what's it called? Like just clean and like healthy compared to some of these places where it's like there isn't even a chance to get to that. So yeah, I'm forever grateful.
Yeah, definitely having that perspective. Yeah, and here last row in the chat, he says he got to play in Korea back in 2014, and it was awesome.
Oh man, dude, great for you. I'm very happy for you because that's one I've not checked off. I'm guessing you mean South Korea, but
Mhm.
that is like so high on my bucket list, especially Seoul. Um, I hear that that is like a country of like just such a beautiful mix between like almost Tokyo like very futuristic downtowns and cities and then beautiful ancient multi-thousand-year-old culture in like the smaller towns and villages, and the people are amazing. Like I love K-pop and South Korean made movies, and like people there are very vibrant and open and expressive and just lovely, so I'm sure you had a great time. And I don't know if you were there for paintball. He said he was there for paintball, right?
Yes.
Okay, hit me up. Please DM me after you hear this on my normal Joe Barrett 50 Instagram, and I'll have you on my show, and you can share all your favorite stories from that entire trip.
Love it. All right, so this
Yeah.
question is brought to us by Paintball Kumite, which is Colt Roberts' training regimen. So you're already 17 episodes in. You're just kind of churning through these pretty quickly. So how has it gone so far?
Yeah. Honestly, it didn't feel like I was turning through them very quickly. Like I don't know what the typical pace is. I don't know if most other podcasts do an episode a week, every other
Mhm.
day, maybe daily. I don't know. I don't know if these are guys that do it full time now, you know? So I just wanted to shoot for at least once a week, and I've done it for 17 weeks now. You know, I started January 1st, so it's been 4 full months. I got another one that's coming out, so that would have been me doing it this week. On like, I just always do it on either Monday or Tuesday, depending on if my guest is free. But as far as how is it going for me, like it's really everything I wanted. You know, it's like it's something I love doing already. So I would do it anyways. And when people occasionally reach out and go, you know, hey, I really like the show. I like the stories, or hey, I like the show because I'm learning a lot. I'm like, well, that's great. You know what I mean? Because if even one person gets to learn a better way to travel or gets to like learn a knowledge that maybe opens their mind more to a country and maybe destroys their vision of that country that they got through like media or just bullshit conditioning or whatever, then like I've already done my job and I was doing it without trying. You know what I mean? Like it's something that I hope I'm doing, but I was just doing this because I love talking to my friends. I enjoy conversations and I would do it anyways. And on top of that, it gives me like a creative outlet. Um, that's still in paintball. You know, like I work a normal career job now. I'm a sales guy for a great company and I love it. But then you kind of get those like, oh shit, it's Monday, right?
Mm.
But now I look forward to Monday and Tuesday because right after work, I hit the gym and then I instantly get here. And then for like 1 to 3 hours, I'm doing something that I was excited to do all day long. So, in another way, it's made me like have more things to look forward through the week other than just grind time on the weekends.
Definitely. Yeah. Podcasting time is uh, definitely a lot of opportunity to kind of like, for me at least on this journey, it's like getting to learn so much about the people that I'm having on the show, but also connecting with those that have just been fans of the show, and having people like approach you at events or even just randomly reach out. They're like, "Hey, I love your show. I want to, just say I appreciate that you're doing this." So, like for you, has the podcasting journey turned out how you thought it would?
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that about connection because that's one of my favorite things. Like I want to get it tattooed on me because I enjoy it so much. And it is a great part because it's like another easy icebreaker or conversationalist thing that now somebody who sees you, I'm sure it happens at your field or out and about, and they kind of know who you are, but they've never actually approached you. Well, now they have something to come up and talk to you about, and they could be
Mm.
like, dude, I like your show. And then you get to chat and you're like, all right, cool. You walk away after a handshake and you're like, that's another person in the community that I can say that I now know. And now I kind of know them better. They're not just the guy that plays Dorito front on the other side of the field for me every weekend, right? But now I know them because of their energy. Like when they approached, I'm like, cool, that was actually a good dude, or a cool girl, or whatever. And I like that part too, because you might not know their whole background unless you get them on the show. But as you meet people from this journey, you do get to know them in a way where you're like, oh, I know you now. Like, I know, that you're a good viber, or like, now I know because of our talk that you're a grinder and you're trying to go pro or whatever.
Mm.
So I'm happy you brought that up. Now, as far as like, I think the question was,
Was how
is
did it
this,
has it gone at how you thought it would?
yeah, I mean, I went into this with no expectations or framework. Like, if you saw my first few episodes, especially on YouTube, I didn't have this like $100 mic right here. I didn't have a Elgato camera. So it sounded horrible and there was no background behind me. So I was just in front of this like glaring white camera and I was using my laptop default camera. So I looked kind of pixely and I didn't care because I just wanted to like start getting something out there for people because there's only so many podcasts and sometimes people are working all day and they have earbuds in and they're like, I wish I had more content. So I just wanted to start something. And now it's become more than I expected it to. I have a buddy Chase that like does all my editing and like IT technical stuff and like makes my show turn out a lot better looking than I ever could because I'm kind of like tech illiterate and I didn't see it going to that. I didn't expect it. I didn't plan for it. So I'd say my show has turned out better than I expected it. Just because it's like it's evolving organically
Mhm.
from like people reaching out and people supporting it while I'm like not trying to put in too much money, like I don't even have money to pay him. And he was just a guy who was like, hey, I see the project you're doing and I want to be part of something like this for paintball. So I'd like to be part of yours. And I'm like, holy shit, I just got like my, Jamie like out of nowhere. And he's a very cool dude. And I've helped him get on like random, NXL teams and whatever because of it. And now it's one more person that I didn't know him. And now we have a connection. Right.
Mhm.
So, and it's helped me learn people better as a human in the show because I love open-ended conversation and tangenting, so of course I want them to share their stories, but while they're sharing the stories, if I get to know more about them as a person, like, I get to know more about Kirill and like that, that he has a family and blah, blah, blah. And like what his lifestyle's like how he is able to do these things while being a family man. Like I've always known Kirill because I was a fan. And then for like 8 years now, I've been a competitor of his, like trying to shoot that guy, right? And
Mhm.
just doing everything I can to try to get as good as him and his team. But now I know him deeper as a person and I have a lot of examples of that, right? So like, yeah, this podcast has just turned out to be like, I guess, better than I hoped for.
Yeah, I think my favorite connection, and I'm trying to pull up the Instagram post that I made a while back to remember his name. But at World Cup, I was working the project booth when in the Hormesis Oasis, and a fan came up and recognized me and said hello to me, and it was Leon Goburn, who is from the UK, and he's a listener, and he just was
Oh.
like he recognized the logo and like I guess just listens from the UK every week when I'm like, whoa, this is like a very Texas focused podcast. But he was listening. He was a fan. He also brought his other friend over, Luke Viles, who does the Banana Bus podcast over in the UK, and like that was suddenly a new connection that I didn't know I was gonna that like was gonna come out of all of this being like a very regionally focused thing.
Hmm. That's super cool, dude. And it's funny because I just heard about that Banana Bus
Mhm.
podcast, and at that time when you were in that Hormesis booth, I did not know about your podcast because it is a regional thing, right?
Right.
And also, a problem in our sport is it's not like there's just like PB Nation used to be a thing, but it's not like there's just this page or forum that shows every podcast. So like you'll see the big ones because they'll share like, hey, check me out on Play the Game, right?
Mhm.
Or hey, check me out on, Playing On or but like I didn't start seeing your podcast until I don't know, maybe like mutual friend shares. I'm like, oh, what this one? Well, I could always use more content, so I'll follow that, start listening through yours too. I need more stuff to listen to, and if it's paintball related, great. And Texas happens to be probably the hotbed for upcoming talent now and the
Mhm.
most pro teams in one state. So if there was ever a regional only paintball podcast that I'd want to listen to, it would probably be Texas, right? So it's funny because had I known you, I would have come up and say hi. But whenever I walk through that booth to like say hi to buddies or, look at a headband or chat with Frazee or someone, I didn't know you. And so you didn't know me.
Mhm.
I probably don't look the same when I'm not in paintball gear. So we never like actually connect. And then we connect in San Antonio. And, I thought that was very cool. You approached me after we were all done and we chatted and now that led to this. So, I'm happy that you get those things too. And now it like starts putting these familiar faces that are kind of always in our bubble around like right there with you and you're like, okay, it's time to finally like bridge this gap and know this person.
Yeah, definitely. It's been fun. connecting with a lot more podcasters, especially. I've been getting more and more involved with Ryan Moffat's show. I had the that big podcasters roundtable a couple of months back now. That was
Yeah.
a lot of fun to do. So yeah. So as far as your show goes, what do you have in store for future episodes?
Oh man. So this is I mean, I can't tell you exactly who's coming up because I don't know. Like I'm not a good
Hmm.
planner. I just reach out. I luckily I know mostly everyone in the pro division now. So I just reach out to people that I'm close with first, and then I start getting through the ones that I know them for years, but like I'm not necessarily good friends with them, right? And hey, have you done any international travels for events? And they're like, yep, I've played in the Euro League Millenniums or whatever. Cool, you want to come on my show? And that's how I get people, right? Like the last 17 are just like that. And I know all these guys and have been teammates with them. I am teammates with them. So you'll probably see every single pro player as well as every OG, like old guys, like, sorry, not to call them old guys, but ex pros or coaches. Like I still haven't had Travis Lemansky, my coach, on, or Chris Lasoya, but I know they're coming on soon because we talk about it, right? And then after I've been through them all, the question is like, then what? Now you've already got the favorite story from everybody. Who are you going to get next, right? Well, I could reach out to friends from other countries, which now I have a few. I know some WNXL girls that have represented for the female USA team over in Europe. And then there's kids that I'm going to have on from like the U16, U19 that I know or personally coach. And I want that story when they get back because that's the first time they've ever traveled. But beyond that, what I'm going to do is like circle back around to like, Harrison Fry is a good friend of mine and he travels a lot. So when he gets back from a particularly cool experience, I'm going to be like, what's up, man? When are you back home? In a week? All right, cool. You want to come back on the show and share that whole event and all the cool stuff you did outside the field while it's fresh? And he's going to come on and do a, quick hour catch up episode with me. And it'll be like that from a lot of my friends who travel.
Love it. Can't wait to see it. So
Yeah.
this question is brought to us by Bioworks IV. So where can people go to check out your show?
So once again, I am not a content person. I am not very good at like the exact places other than Spotify and YouTube, but I host my show through Buzzsprout. So it immediately puts it on like, I want to say like 18 or 20 other podcast platforms. Like I guess like Apple Music would probably be one of the bigger ones. But all those little ones, that's where if I check my dashboard, I can see like, oh, sweet, I actually have like, a couple hundred downloads, but they're from these weird, obscure places that like my podcast is labeled as a travel podcast, right? So you can find them on most of the podcast platforms. But if you're anything like me, you probably just want to put it on Spotify and then sync it to your car for your road trip, right? Or you put it in your ear pods, Spotify, put your phone away while you're doing your couple hours in the gym. And that's where I think the best place to check it out is. I mean, if you watch it on YouTube, it's just this exact thing right here, and then a square where you'd be with my guest and whatever their background happens to be. And it's the same thing. We're just talking, right? Like occasionally we'll show off a cool gun or something nostalgic, but for the most part, I really feel like my show is more an audio show than a visual show.
All right, for sure. So yeah,
And then you can find info. Sorry, I didn't finish
go
the
ahead.
question completely. You can find info about the show, like the next episode or when the episode is live. Like it'll keep you updated if you're not already just like subscribed to my Spotify or whatever you do. I don't know what you do honestly. Like I don't subscribe to stuff. I just know what I want to search each week. With those other big guys, right? Or with yours, you just already come up in my shows. But if you want to like keep an eye on my like coming up stuff, like what's coming out tomorrow or like the stuff that is out, my Instagram page is Paintball Passport. So it's just that. I don't know how I lucked out and got Paintball Passport without having to add a 1 or whatever, but yeah, that's if you search that you'll find me.
Love it. All right. Yeah. Go check Joe's show out. Paintball Passport on Spotify. I'm sure it's on all those other platforms as well. So
Yeah.
this question's brought to us by FU Athletics. So throughout your entire paintball career, do you have a single favorite moment?
Man, jeez. Like, I feel like that question could be two different things, right?
Mm.
Because there's a moment, like a singular moment, which obviously isn't a split second, but it's like this moment, right? Like when you win the tournament and you put your gun down and there's that moment of like yes, but also like relief. That's a moment. But I think also you could say like what's your favorite tournament? And that moment is pretty big. It's like a weekend or a weeker, right? But like to me, the memory that I can look back on like fondly, like if I am about to fall asleep on a plane going somewhere, and I can repicture and relive that whole thing as if it's all one encased moment, was my like really long backpacking multi-event adventure in 2018. I started at World Cup, and then I went from there straight to Super Sevens Australia. Played with New Zealand's team. I was actually in New Zealand for a week or two first, and then went to Sydney for a week. And then after that, I went up to Thailand and played. Forget if it was Teapot or Pals or what it was, but it was an event on the beach in Pattaya, and I played in the Open Pro division there with my friends on the Belgium team, which is Breakout Spa, and we won that over a lot of really good teams with other pro players on it. And on that team, I had my good friends Harrison Fry, Ben Challenger, and then a bunch of really cool Belgium guys, right? At the same time as that tournament, we won the Nations Cup as Team USA, and I joined the pro player that was on each of their teams. And at the time, that was Tim Montresor, one of my favorite people ever. Rest in peace, a legend and the original traveler and ambassador for paintball, like the world, Mr. Worldwide, right? And then Ronnie Dezan, Marcelo Margot, or Margot, I got to play with him, as a teammate, and we meshed really well out there. Chad George, Sam Monville. Feel like there's somebody else in there big name wise, and then me and Harrison, and that was Team USA, and we dominated the USA Nations Cup all the way until playing my other own team, which was Team Belgium, and of course it's Breakout Spa as a pro team, so they're going to be very good. And so I won 2 championships in another country in one day. And then at the end of that day, it was just like this like surreal, enlightening, whatever moment, because I've just done like at this point like a month and a half of travel, and then it came to this climax of winning both these tournaments, like one with a lot of my like heroes and peers, and one against those like heroes and like legendary peers. And it felt like really just like establishing like, okay, I'm not just like a guy who's going to get second or third anymore. Like, I was the guy that people had to beat at this tournament,
Mm.
And then Oliver Lang shows up out of nowhere and is like sitting on this big like square like water cube thing, just like a Jedi master, like a wise prophet, just kind of like watching the second half of those Nations Cup games, right? And after that, like we're celebrating, we're on the field, we're getting the pictures or whatever. And then I just remember we're over there getting like almost like a sermon, like an hour straight of like just really like poetic, wise things from Oliver. And then he gave me one of the very first Hormesis headbands, which I still have, before they were like what they currently are, which is like this thing was like a prototype out of like bamboo fabric. It's like falling apart at this point. But it was like there wasn't even a Hormesis logo on it. It was just like this thing, and he's like, "Hey, think I'm gonna start making like these cool headbands and like some stuff with like a lot of like personal intention to it, and it's stuff that I'm getting where I live now in Bali." And I was like, holy shit. So that was quite a keepsake. That was like cooler to take home than the medals and the trophies, right? And then after all that, we still went to another tournament. Like we backpacked to Malaysia, and I played another tournament in Langkawi's like indoor facility, which is like this cool sports facility on an island surrounded by beaches. I had already been there before, but I love this place, right? And my team at that time is me, Harrison, and Ben, because we're doing this whole travel together. And then Mishka and Fedorov are like our other guys, and Jason Burns too. And then my buddy from New York, Extreme Trowix. So we have like this superstar roster, fully funded, 2 weeks in paradise, end up losing, but like in a ridiculous fashion, overtime in finals to Russian Legion. And it was just like, holy crap, man, like what kind of dream am I living in? I guess this is that thing that I always wanted when I was that young, 13-year-old kid. And these are those trips that I was aspiring to get. So that whole trip, I think, is more important to me than any one moment, than any one just like a win. You know what I mean? Like, or a one-on-one in a match or whatever. I think that whole thing was just like, the single best experience of my entire life.
And that's like any one of those aspects of that whole trip could have been anybody else's number one moment, let alone like all of those strung together. That's amazing. Oh man.
Yeah, and there's a million stories in there. I should eventually tell it sometime on my own show, because there's like near-death experiences, there's moped crashes. That's why it's a segment on my show. There's getting arrested by cops and almost not being let to the airport. There's, going on dates with girls in each country. Like, there was just all these things where it's like, this is so fucking movie-esque. Like, this is why this is the best part of life, like every spectrum of like an action movie was like happening to me and us, like people I was with. And you're just like, dude, this is wild to be like fortunate enough to be like in this position where our sport brings us here, and people here might see us as a celebrity or just, as a cool foreigner or whatever. And it just led to like a million different mini stories and like really cool experiences that, yeah, dude, just my favorite memories of all time are all from that giant trip.
Love it. Yeah, that sounds like something you might have to write a book about one day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Awesome. So this next question is brought to us by 71 Designs. So turning the conversation to back to the U.S. to the current season with Team Infamous. So in Vegas, you guys had a Sunday appearance, and then Dallas didn't go so well. So a ton of top teams also struggled very heavily in Dallas, and it was a little surprising to me, considering that the thing that everybody said was this is the most traditional layout that we've had in a long time. And yet the traditionally top teams like Dynasty and even Impact didn't even make it out of prelims, while lower teams like Blast Camp and the ML Kings earned their way into Sunday. So what do you think was it about the event that made the results so wild?
Yeah. So I am happy to talk about this. Once again, I'm not going to say like, I'm smart enough to know that I don't know anything at all. So other people might have a different perspective, but like I am also a coach. So like I could see from that side what I thought the reason was. And I'll start with this. That may have on paper looked like a traditional layout because there is a straight ladder snake, which means there's going to be a wire fight to get down to it, right? And then there's a long straight row of Doritos. They're not segmented back and forth. There's no like different weird big wedge them. It's just straight Doritos, tape, gunfighter paradise. And then there is a pretty centered on the field center structure, right? So you think, oh, this looks pretty this is just like the foundations of early X-Ball, especially compared to that last layout, which was like kitty corner, or compared to layouts last year where it's like, whoa, there's like a really big wedge structure, but it's all to the right side of the field. And then there's some open space and then the D side or the snake side or whatever, right? So yeah, it's more traditional in that light, but to me, this field actually lacked a lot of components of a traditional field. And that was because this is not on the Dorito side, but on the center and the snake side, like zones of the field, people could get to a lot of those spots completely unseen. Whereas like on other layouts, you figure out a way. Like it might be tough, but like you find like a bunker that like at least sees that gap. Or even if it's not a bunker, you find like a dead spot, like a floating spot in the box that can see and shoot that gap. on this field, there actually was that for the snake side, but it was also the spot of death, at least on the pro field. Like there was this spot off the snake side of the box that you could actually shoot at the snake guy and see him go rather than the back center where you're like, I'm shooting at it, but I don't know if he went or not. But that spot was very easy to shoot and people knew that you had to be there. So you would just get shot to shit in that spot. Right. And then the same thing in the center. There was ways to get up to the center, whether it was going to that tower, kind of going to the Aztec if you slid into it low the right way or delayed there, or if you just went right up the center off break, or if you delayed there from home, like shot a few balls, then went, you could be up at the center unseen. And then in the middle of the game, even if people weren't up there, they could sneak up there from multiple different bunkers and different sides unseen. And guys could literally get down from that snake tower and just crawl into the snake, and their mirror and stuff could not see them, right? So you were playing this field, back to the coaching side of stuff, that looks traditional, but is actually very hard to control or to know every variable. And a lot of those top teams, like Impact, like Dynasty, who else, like Hurricanes, and kind of like what my team has evolved to be, are trying to play a more controlled game. You know, they're trying to like be able to, they might not be able to shoot those spots, but they're trying to be able to know where the 5 spots are and either play that spot directly or play zone in front of it. So it's like, okay, we might not know which bunker you're in, but we know where you're in one of those 3 because we have the zone in front of that one, right? And once you have control of like the 5 spots, or at least the 5 areas that the other players are in, now you know how to play the situation. But on that field, there was not really a true way to control it. So I think that the teams that played knowing like, hey, we don't know if he's in the snake or not, so be very cautious of the whole snake. And if you get shot by him, you can't say, well, I didn't know he was in there, nobody yelled at me. You can't put the blame on other guys now. On other layouts, you could be like, dude, that was your zone, you got put in, you could have at least told me, hey, caution the snake, because when you got put in, he probably went, right? Now, whether you think you had him or not, he's probably already in there. So it's on every player's individual responsibility rather than being so reliant on the team to just be like, hey, if I get shot by that guy, it's not so-and-so's fault for not letting me zone there. It's on me. So I now have to play cautious of the snake zone and the center zone the entire game. And I think that kind of made people who were willing to take not necessarily completely calculated risks, but like risks based off the breakout of like, well, I know we shot a guy, so if I get this other guy fast, we're up 4-on-3, right? And I just cleared the center. Maybe another guy comes to center, but that means they don't have anybody left to refill that side where they lost a guy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It almost, those type of players, it paid off for. Like guys like A-Rod played well up there in the scramble and chaos. And guys like Soap on Blast Camp would play well in the chaos, and they would normally get 2 or more. And then guys like Kirill, I thought played better than anybody because he would use his gun as a bunker to run and gun to that one Aztec where people actually can see you go there, but he knew that he was good enough that he was going to shoot that shooter in the home or flinch him and put him in, and he was going to get himself there. And then up there, he has all the view. And if he didn't already kill a guy, which he probably would because he's an accurate runner gunner, now he could see the situation and be like, oh, I have the next move to go further. I can actually pass the 50 into that wing now. Or while I was up here shooting that guy, I saw a guy dive into the snake, so I'll come back into the center brick and wait aiming down on the snake until I kill that guy. But he gets to see the if-thens because he's going there on his gun and willing to take kind of a more risky strategy. And it paid off.
Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite moments from the event was Sunday morning as we were kind of going through all of the delays and the divisionals. They still ended up playing out the rest of the event, but we were delayed by, I think, 2 or 3 hours. But during that time, we actually managed to get a nice chat in with Jason Trojan. And getting to hear kind of his philosophies on how he creates the layouts, but also the whole situation with how like the bunker kit came to be with adding the 8 snake beams from last season. and hearing that his idea was he presented a problem to the I guess Air Ups or Sup Air, whoever the current manufacturer is. He said, hey, I want to figure out a way to make it so that players can go between these center structures unseen. And I guess the best solution for that was more snake beams. And we're seeing that now, where especially with like all of the going back and forth that's possible between the center bunkers. We saw it in Vegas. We saw it with this Dallas layout. Like that's kind of the next evolution of the game, is not like there are some things that you just straight up can't control, which that seems to be like the damage, the impact style of old, where like nowadays it's more like, hey, well, we can't control it. Let's control it by being the first guy to these spots and shooting all of them out before they do the same thing to us.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. It's cool that you got that insight, and you can see he definitely went for that, and it paid off well. There's a certain part of that still benefits a team like Tampa Bay Damage, and it's why they did very well. And it's because they might not have a lot of control. They might not be able to see the move back and forth from one wedge to the brick to the other on that particular layout, right? But as long as they know they have to be cautious of all that edge as if it's just one big bunker, those guys are willing to gunfight. So now there's a little bit more mini game within the point. There's a different meta, and it's, hey, are you a very sharp, crispy gunfighter? Because you might have a lot more bunker to work at, and they spied you at one, and now you can free move to the other rather than cross a gap they're waiting on. But your next shot, you still have to make it count, right? You still have to shoot these guys out that are very good at playing tight with body awareness and very, very good at landing their first shots or living behind their gun.
Definitely. And it seems like, well, with these snake beams that are now in more spots on the field, this is the next evolution of the game. It's not just, hey, we're going to control the zones and shoot all of these bounce shots until someone in one of the backline bunkers dies and then go down that side. It's it's more and more the calculated risk. Where can I get a 2-for-1 on whatever side, be it the snake side or the center, and then go from there. There's definitely more variety there, at least with this current iteration.
100%. And you know what's funny is, even before this year, I got to give a shout out to Archie Monomayer, who, I have a lot of respect for as a person and a player, but also as a pioneer of figuring out ways to play the game. Because even before last year, I want to say even 2 seasons ago, before this season, when they won that World Cup, the first one Oliver came back, Archie was playing a different meta out there. Yes, they had that long snake that was really hard to get to, so guys would play pocket. But then when you get in there, what do you expect? Like, most teams know, hey, if he does the right thing right now, because he's in there and we're not wide, he's going to come all the way down, come up in our snake one, and start shooting everybody on the side of the head, right? And Archie didn't do that. And he actually outperformed every other snake player, even like the guys that you think as like the snake bowling balls, right? Like the Mouses, the Urenas, the Jonas, the blah, 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 the Billies, they played great too. But they would do the thing you'd expect. They would go to at least the 50, if not past it, if they didn't have somebody in there with them. But Archie went, you know what? Everybody's going to be pulled flat, playing super tight, aiming at their own side, waiting for me. So I'm going to start working these notches and like actually putting my gun skills to use rather than just doing the correct chess move. He's like, I'm going to do that the slow and methodical way with a lot of different looks and like possible new angles until I'm down there. And he shot a ton of freaking people doing that. And now, sure enough, they didn't have a good event, right? Like, they didn't play as a good team. But if you watched Archie play that snake where guys had a million different notches and knuckles and wrap spots they had to look at, Archie played that snake masterfully. And so you could see why he was frustrated they didn't do well, because Archie is in there pulling back down body situations, being the aggressor and playing it a way that he knows what they're thinking, so he's playing one step ahead. You know what I mean? It's chess. They're playing checkers, and he goes, oh, I know what you expect. So if I do this, I'm going to catch your loader sticking out or whatever. Right.
Yeah, definitely. So, this question's brought to us by Hydra. So the event, obviously, for the pro division didn't finish, and they're going to be continuing it over in Atlantic City on Thursday. So, or maybe Wednesday. I'm not sure the exact timeline there, but so they're going to finish out the playoffs there. And how has that affected you, and how Infamous is planning and preparing for the next one?
That's a good question. So, um, honestly, it doesn't affect us at all because we are out. So if we were in, you would have a very different discussion, right? Because you'd be talking to a team where it's like, oh man, we know it's a blind layout, so we'll probably set up multiple layouts just so we can each day learn on, like, there's practice, but there's also practicing learning a layout. That's a skill itself, right?
Hmm.
So teams will do that before blind layouts. I remember we did that on Aftermath before the Texas blind layout. We just played three different fields at ASG, and each field was different. And so throughout that day, you just mastered a layout by the end of your 30 points of your day, 30, 40 points, whatever. The next day, you have that frustrating first 5, 10 points again because you're like, God damn it, I'm not sure quite how this field plays. By the end of that day, you've learned how to figure out that layout again, right? So if you were talking to Russian Legion or a team that moved on, they might be doing some of that. And then they also, maybe the week beforehand or the last day before the end of the layout, they might set up this other Dallas layout and play it again just to refresh themselves or like get that same muscle memory on those shots and angles back. So they might have to play two or more different things, right? But for us, we don't have to worry about the AC layout because unfortunately we sucked, or sorry, the Dallas layout, and we're out, right? So we do not have to worry about maintaining like, hey, remember how this was playing? I know we got to win another tournament, but we still got to finish this one. We just have to worry about how to play the blind layout. And I believe that will probably be like the way I discussed. I imagine we'll play several different fields. Some might be very chaotic just so we get used to the scramble. Others might be more traditional. Maybe one's super center heavy. Maybe another's like pocket or very slow. But I imagine we'll probably try to give ourselves a bunch of dynamic looks and just be focused on the task at hand, which for us is only one tournament.
Yeah, definitely. Have you found that it's affecting things like who you're going to be able to scrimmage leading into the event, or?
Um, Honestly, I don't handle all those logistics. Normally, Infamous is a team because all of our players are from everywhere that we just fly into whatever area the event is and we play whatever those local teams are, or maybe one or two of the other teams that is a traveling team, right? So for Texas, we're like, all right, we'll find a Texas team, which would be San Antonio X Factor. And sure enough, you have other teams that are willing to travel, like Heat and Impact. So it was easy, right? So for this team, we'll probably end up with something like that. The weird thing is, oftentimes I don't really care if we do, but some teams don't want to practice a team in their bracket. But because the other event has not finished up yet, we don't know what the brackets are. So you might end up practicing with two teams and learn how they're playing and how to beat them all weekend, and then they end up in your bracket, or vice versa. So that is the one place this will be unique because we can't wait till the last minute to like book someone and like lock it in, or else you're just hoping that there's someone left to play and you're like trying to figure out your flights last minute. But we don't know how that's going to play out because there is no AC bracket yet.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious how it's going to work as far as pro teams scrimmaging other pro teams, or maybe even semi-pro teams getting in on some of these, because I mean, with the 10 teams that are still in, are they only going to be playing other 10 teams that are still focusing on that layout? Are
Yeah.
semi-pro teams that are typically or maybe sometimes involved in some of these scrimmages, teams like Leverage, New York Wrecking Crew, are they still going to be invited to these practices, even though semi-pro, they're going to have their own layout? Uh,
Yep.
so how is that situation going to look?
That's a good question. It was posed to us like, well, what if one of these teams that we books wants to play the old layout? honestly, we're gonna do it, right? Because if we're looking to play with that team, we've reached out, or it's a team that we're friendly with as sparring partners, and they're a good team. So we want to play them either way. And yeah, we did already play that. It's annoying to keep beating the same video game over and over. But you know what? We sucked in Dallas once again. So we didn't beat that video game. So as long as it's not every day, if it's maybe one of our 3 to 5 days that we practice, then I think we'd be okay with it, because it's like, guys, clearly we didn't fully fix this or figure it out. So let's keep doing it for a day, and maybe those lessons or that process will transfer over to the next field the next day. It's not so much about the layout. Like, honestly, paintball kind of always plays a similar way. At least, and it's kind of, yeah, that was different last event, but the simplicity of the pro game is because everyone has such good gun skills and we're all intelligent. The game is, where do you have an advantage? Are you wide here and they're not? Okay, never let them get wide, and let's win where you can go wide, or let's pinch them where they're in that spot where they're pretty much running out of time in bunker space, right? And then you just work it one by one and play the body advantage game. There are metas to that for sure. You know what I mean? There's bounce shots, there's baiting, there's blah, 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 blah. But the overall game is kind of simple and similar more times than not. So it's okay to play one layout and just look at, like, okay, well, what was a process we figured out there? Like, how did we establish which side was dominant, or what, like, the key touchdown bunker was, or what the best bunkers to anchor and trap each sides, or to anchor and, like, survive in a hold point. And then if you look over the other field and you're like, well, this is a completely different snake side, but the D side is actually pretty similar, then I'll bet you a lot of those processes could transfer over.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Jason Trojan cooks up for the Pro Division's layout, especially since it's going to be, presumably completely different from the divisional field. So
True.
will be very interesting to see how teams kind of like switch gears, especially if they're going deep on Thursday. And then suddenly, oh, well, this snake is it's a segmented snake where you can see every cut. Or, hey, there's a massive forest in the center where you can't really see anything. Like, we'll see how the gears are shifted there.
Yes. Now, I have a question for you about that part after finishing this topic, because you mentioned the semi-pro teams. I think pro teams will play semi-pro teams, like the really good ones that they happen to be near in their region. Like, I remember on Aftermath, we used to play Blast Camp sometimes if they were, just going to be a third team for another look at a place where we were already playing a pro team, because we were like, they're damn good. And look at, sure enough, now they're a pro team and they're a Sunday pro team this event. So if there's a team that it's like, okay, that team's been together for a long time, that's actually a solid team, and a lot of the individuals are talented, you will see pro teams play those semi-pro teams, especially because why? Those semi-pro teams are playing a layout they have to play, so they're going in. They're playing hard and also trying to learn, and they're in that, like, the process state where they're trying to figure it out, make progress, and learn as they go, while playing very hard to, like, earn their play spots or whatever. So the pro team is not going to play that layout, but that right there is great practice for a blind layout, because you don't know the layout anyways. So maybe you happen to play this layout and some of the things transfer over to the blind layout. Maybe not necessarily exactly where the bunkers are, but like aspects of the field, like, oh, it's a very clustery center, or it's a pretty spaced out center, right? So it'll be good to play that semi-pro team, because at least they're a semi-pro team. It's a high caliber team. And you get one more good day or two or weekend of practice on, let's figure out this layout. And we actually have to figure out, we're not just rec ball and bullshitting. We're figuring out a real layout against a high caliber team that is doing their very best to figure it out. And because those teams don't compete, they can actually, like, share input and notes. And, like, that pro team gets to help, maybe it's their farm team in semi-pro. But that semi-pro team gets to tell them every little bit they can about, like, what it is they're actually thinking is going to work on this layout, and the harmony of the two will help each team improve. One team will do better at the event because they got to play a pro team the whole weekend. The other team got to pretend like they were learning an event field, you know?
Mhm.
Now, the question I was going to ask you off that, because I didn't think about it until you were chatting about the topic right before this, is this is going to be strange. If it's a blind field on the Sunday court where the pros play, but all divisional teams are playing a field that's released, what happens when those divisional teams make it to their finals games on the pro Go Sports field?
I think they're just gonna have to go play on the premier field on semi-pro. That's what it sounds like to me.
Maybe. And that's what I don't know that rumor yet. I don't know if they, unfortunately, this event won't get to be on the webcast in their own finals, semi-pro through D5, just because it's like, hey guys, we'd love to, but we can't take down the pro finals to set up your layout and then put the pro blind layout back up for the pro finals, which is the last game. We just can't do it. Or once upon a time, back in the very end of PSP, there was a blind layout in pro, and it was true semi. It was this very weird, particular one-time Dallas event. All the teams in divisional played a certain layout the whole time. Because I remember this was like, I want to say 2015. I was on New York Extreme, and we played a certain layout, and we made it pretty far into Sunday, and then we lost to a team called Prime, which ended up being a lot of PC Katana guys. That team ended up going and playing in finals. I forget who they played against on the pro layout. So they all of a sudden are playing their finals game, their most important game of the event, on a layout that they have not touched. They got to walk it in the few hours between their semifinals and their finals later in the afternoon. And I was like, holy shit, that is a crazy ask, you know? Like, nobody's had to do that since NPPL when you had to walk like, 7, 8 different fields.
Right.
And maybe because of your prelims, you kept playing on the Angel and the JT field, and all of a sudden, finals, you're on like the Spider field or the whatever, and you're like, oh shit, double snake on this field. We were really good on the traditional fields, but this is kind of weird. So let's hope we're better than the other finals team at basically walking this and thinking of the best concept on the fly, and then just putting our teamwork into execution on the idea that we think this layout is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would be shocked if that's what they make the divisional teams do at this layout at this upcoming event. But I think because what they've done in the past, especially what was it, 2 years ago, when they were experimenting with like how to do the schedule with the WNXL coming to the pro field and all that, was they would have the divisional finals go to the semi-pro premier field. So I would expect that the schedule is going to line up to where, like, hey, if you're not pro, sorry, you're going to the premier field for your finals.
Yeah. I could see that, and I would be shocked if it went the way I just explained. But part of me is also, it would not be shocked. And this is where, like, I'm not going to shit on the league because I think they do as good as they can, but they are looking at it from a different perspective. And I think that's what people have to understand. Like what they did, some of the decisions this last event, people may have not agreed with. They were on both sides of the fence. You're not going to make everyone happy. So in that place, I never hate on them because it's like, dude, you're going to get shit on no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. But we all look at it from the player's perspective, or maybe from a team owner's perspective. And so, of course, we want to bitch and moan about blah, blah, blah. This is ruining like the game, the in the field, blah, blah, blah. They are looking at it from a league and a promoter's perspective, which means, what is the product I'm putting out here? All these people paid. Can I finish the thing? And that's why they had a bunch of games finished last event and like kicked the pro teams off. Like basically a lot of that was unanimous and probably voted on, but it was also in the NXL's best interest because they know the pro teams are coming back next event and they know they'll come back a day early. But all those teams that paid and moved on in divisional, they can't guarantee those teams are coming back because there's a lot of divisional teams that don't play every event. They just play in their region. really the only teams that are vested and going to play all 5 events in divisional are the semi-pro teams that are in the hunt for the series title because they want to go pro. And everybody else is like, Philly's kind of expensive to fly into. Maybe we'll skip that one. Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like it's still it's a product being sold to a customer, and they are not obligated to show up. So you want to make sure that they get to finish out that thing in whatever fashion it finishes out. Now, why I say I wouldn't be surprised if we saw that is because of this issue. Because of this right here, you just don't know what they're going to do, or if it is what we think is a weird decision for gameplay to make sure that they finish the event, or for it to logistically make more sense to them, or for it to not cost them another day's worth of a field and refs and 40 grand or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, there are still things that I think are bonkers and don't make sense on the pro field, but they happen. And so in that way, I'm not shocked. Like, last event, we had 2 divisional fields on each side of our event, our field, right?
Right.
So like on the pro field, where like this is the product that you want to webcast and people to be able to follow at home, and it needs to go to ESPN. You have pro teams and players looking like doofuses, false starting, and just getting pulled for no reason, not because they got shot, because they went on another buzzer that was a split second before our buzzer. And it's like, that to me seems like such an easy fix to like get the other fields and the DJ booths away from the pro field, put it on its own island so that there's no weird variables affecting the pro field. And it's not just because I'm a spoiled pro player and want it to be easier on my field, but it's because I also look at it from an audience and fan perspective. And it's like, why is there that weird variable there? Like, why are people being pulled when I didn't see them get shot? And they don't know, watching the webcast on a little laptop, that it's because that guy got pulled because the ref next to him was radioed, hey, pull that guy, he left early. You know, that seems to me like a very easily avoidable mistake for an easy example. But it persists and drives me crazy because of whatever. There's probably some logistic reason where they're only offered X amount of space and fields must be in certain areas so they don't ruin another plot of grass, or I don't know. You know, I'm guessing here.
Right.
Your best goes mine, but now every event, it's like I'll try to find somebody, and you know, after the first event, be like, hey, you had a divisional field right behind us on the side. It kind of sucked we were on that side. Can you guys figure out something to do? Next event, now there's 2 divisional fields. There's one on both sides, and like part of me was upset, but also I wasn't surprised because I'm like, I don't know what it is that the league is dealing with, but like I guess this is part of the battle.
Right, for sure. It'll be interesting to see how they handle all those challenges for the next one. So yeah, I think we're kind of getting towards the end of our show, but this next question is one that I ask everybody that comes on, and it's brought to us by Get Dat Shot. So message him on Facebook or Instagram if you're needing media coverage at the upcoming USXBL event next weekend. He's taking both team and individuals bookings. So, Joe, and this question is to help me kind of get the word out on anybody flying under the radar, or any up and comers out there, in not just on the field, but also on the sidelines, off the field, and the community as a whole. So is there anybody in paintball, teams, players, brands, projects that have caught your attention lately? Who do you think deserves more recognition for what they're doing?
Oh man, that's a good question. And I guess there's a few different answers there, right? Depending on if you're talking about players and then like company products or industry things, right? So,
And they could be the big guy, little guy, doesn't matter. Like just someone who's making an impact out there.
yeah. So I'll say, league and industry wise, Mike Hinman, who has caught my attention for a million different reasons over my career and watching his career, right? A legend in so many ways, but like, you see that guy is really still like a paintballer at heart. Like, he doesn't play, but like, he's a paintballer doing stuff for paintballers, and his league is massive. I'll actually be playing at least an event in it, the WCPPL in SoCal. But now he also has a league that has become the next biggest league right after the other one in Texas. And I just love what he's doing with it. Like, his media is free and top notch. There's drone footage and free webcasts, and like a vendor area that's filled with like good food and lots of cool companies that are just kind of like invited to come to like help it be organically growing as it should. I just really like he has the freedom to do all these things, and so he does them. So that always catches my attention, like watching that progress. I'm just like that could be something really sweet in the future. Player wise, since moving to the Northwest, I've seen a few kids really capture my attention as up and comers. Like there's these kids, Thomas Taylor's son Keith, and then one of his little teammates Pat, and then a friend of mine Tyler's son Skylar, and there's a few other kids like there's like the Singra brothers and stuff like that. But these couple kids, they were on Infamous Kids, which is now iconic. They are outstanding. Like they work hard, they have gun skills, but more than anything, at only like 13 or 14, they're much better than I was at that age. They're better than I was at 16, 17 when I was like more athletic than them because they have a composure and like an understanding of the way the game plays and good communication skills. They're not just quiet or they're not just screaming a bunker all game. They actually talk with each other. So they have a lot of things that really like put them ahead of the curve. And now two of them even play D3. Like they're still with their team, but they also play D3 with forget the team names. Shock Kids for sure with Keith, and then the other team. It's bugging me that out of this team. Super cool blue jerseys, Planet Eclipse team, and both those teams went to Sunday last event in D3 as a bunch of like 15-year-old kids and some younger than that. And in D3, you have teams that have been in the game for years and a lot of like grown ass men, and they were whooping ass. So
I think the team was Livewire.
Livewire, that's the team.
Yep.
Yes, yeah, very cool, gritty young team. It was exciting to catch one of their games on the finals field, and like who knows what it'd have been like watching that young aggressive team if it wasn't 2-foot water puddles everywhere where you kind of have to play short and all that, but they were sweet and they played still a good entertaining brand of paintball. And then beyond that, pro players that have caught my eye, I'm sure they're catching everyone's eye, I mean, without just giving a bunch of credit to my own teammates, I would say Ryan Moorhead. And this is not just this year, but really a lot of last year too. This dude is a monster. Like he's always been a player that I've loved watching since the Philly American days, but recently I don't know what the difference is. Like he was always good on heat the years before, but now it's like I don't know how this dude doesn't get played every point of the tournament because he is a creative, unorthodox, aggressive phenom that just gets it done over and over and over on whatever side he is going down, and in a very entertaining fashion that like I don't think you would teach this. Like I wouldn't try to play like him or emulate his style, right? But for him it works and it works very well and it's sweet to see. I think another unsung hero is Brandon Cornell, and for the complete opposite way. Like whenever you play Brandon Cornell, that dude is such a consistent and consummate survivor, and he's intelligent. He makes cerebral moves. He has godlike timing for, like not being one of the vets in the generation above mine and his. But like that dude's become, in my opinion, like, I don't know, kind of the most consistent guy on a star-studded roster like Impact because he is a survivalist and an opportunist. Like you'll see him make sick moves, but he won't die forcing moves until that moment. He'll be alive and just a thorn in your side that you have to think about from a position like mine that's like trying to stop him from coming down the field. And he's annoying, but he's a great player. And the times I've got to play him with him, like street balling and whatever, he's fun to play with because he's great all around and a good talker, and still a humble student of the game. So I really like that. And then lastly, fucking Elliot Weaver, dude. This guy, I thought he was, what's the word? Like underrated for a long time. Even back when we'd play them on Boom, which was before Pro. We played them Boom when we were on DMG, but I used to play those guys in semi-pro. Before that, I was playing them in D2, like sometimes on Sunday and stuff like that. And Elliot Weaver was always a monster. And then, he went to other teams like, I guess, NRG, and now Revo. And after practicing against him, and, when you practice teams that are actually filled with cool dudes and not just like assholes that won't even tell you bounced them here and there when you saw it bounce. When you're with certain teams and you're like sharing feedback because you're both still on day one, and like you're not trying to hide secrets from each other. You want to let each other know about that bounce shot so that they use it, so that the field is being played realistically the whole weekend. If you don't tell those guys or those teams that, then when you run into the top 8 teams that know it, you're fucked, because you're like, well, we are waxing that other team because we were hiding shit, right? So anyways, because of this reason, I've got to play against Elliot quite a bit last season, and he'd be the guy that I would end up in one-on-ones with. And I'm like, man, this guy is fucking good. Like, survivalist, sick gun skills, reads the field well, fills well, like knows when to be alive, but also knows when to capitalize. Just a really like good, well-rounded player that I've enjoyed watching, because I'm a student of the game too, and I still always watch all the veterans and all the top teams. But if there's a set that I'm watching and I can see him, he typically plays the same spots I do at events because we have similar skill sets. And he's just another guy that like I enjoy watching him, but I can also like, take a tip or two from each event.
For sure. I mean, everybody that you just mentioned is definitely deserving. So yeah, I think that does it for our show. This final question is brought to us by Compete. Message Jell Stewart on Facebook or Instagram. Mention In the Pits for 10% off of your order. So Joe, thank you so much for your time. Do you have any last shout outs or things you'd like to say before we sign off?
I'd like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know how often people, spin it, but I like the conversation. So I only found your show recently. Like I said, I don't know if you said these things in the early episodes, but like, do you still currently play? What team are you on? What division? And a little bit of your background.
Okay. So I play. I play on the Texas Titans in Division 3. We just won NXL Dallas, actually. So I've been playing since 2015. Started with the NCPA Texas Longhorns. Played for 4 years. Graduated in 2019, and then started. Basically helped start this team, the Texas Titans, out of players mostly within the Central Texas area, because at that time a lot of like the regional Texas events were dominated by teams up in the DFW area, which is like all the paintball fit area teams. So our mission was basically to prove that we could form a winning team in Texas with players from outside of the kind of fits influence, and we did exactly that. So I've been with the Texas Titans. This is my 4th season. We've won at every level. We've fielded lines from D5 to D3. We've won at every single one of those levels every year. So yeah, now my team is, since we got 2nd place in Vegas and we won Dallas, we're going to be ranking up to D2 next year. And so we're seeing what's next.
Cool. And so off that, because some people are just in it for fun, whatever, but do you have further aspirations where you intend on going pro, or you intend on this team to keep winning its way up and organically become a pro team?
Yeah. Our goal was D1 by 2026. So cool. we are on track for that, I'd say. My personal goal was by the time I turn 30 in 2 years to be at the point where I'm getting considered or invited to pro tryouts. That was the big, I guess my second goal. My first goal was win in D5, win in D4, podium in D3. And then somewhere in there also win in NXL. So all of my original goals have been completed at this point. So the next thing is considered for pro tryouts by the time I'm 30 in 2 years. So I'd say I'm pretty on track there.
Yeah, very cool. Well, congrats on reaching all the goals you've set for yourself so far. And it does seem like you're on track, and that's very attainable. As long as you keep working hard, stay humble, stay a student, keep asking the guys around you, plenty of pros in your area, or even, guys like me on your show, or whatever, like use the
Mm.
resources and don't be afraid to ask for advice or tips or even guidance for how to do it along the way beyond the field. Like what's ways that you can work your way into being around the right people and all that. And I think you can definitely do it. But I guess where I wanted to go with this, because now it lets me know to keep an eye on you,
Hmm.
is as a divisional player, hopefully you're pro and you still have this show. So that'll be cool. It'll be like
Oh
people
yeah.
remember the show from the transition. I think that'll be very cool. But as a divisional guy, like, I guess what made you want to do this show, and what gave you the confidence to believe it would work and go, people don't know me yet. I'm in D3, but people are gonna listen.
Mm. Well, this show was never about me. The show has always been about the guests that I have on the show, and about highlighting really what's going on in Texas. Because for me, the thing, and I'm actually gonna start to wrap this up here, just because I really need to pee. So we've
I
been going on
got
for a
you.
while. So
Yeah.
the the thing for me was Texas, even though it was one, everybody thinks of it as one region, felt very segmented. And part of that was how big Texas is, like geographically. And there's a bunch of different scenes within Texas. There was the DFW area scene, Paintball Fit. There's the Houston scene. There's the Austin scene, the San Antonio scene, the Valley scene down by the border. And then there's like kind of Lubbock and Corpus Christi, like all of these different regions within the Texas region that all felt very disconnected from each other. And I wanted to know like what was going on in my region. Who are the people that we need to know? Who do we need to highlight to help kind of bring Texas a little bit more together? And so that was my goal from the beginning. And I'd say like through having people like all the way from pro players like and local legends like Colt Roberts, Alex Martinez, all the way down to like this, teams like a youth division all girls team based out of Paintball Fit, to people that don't even play but they're members of the community like Clint Riddle, who's from Texas. He does all of the artwork for Hermesis. So just highlighting all different parts of the scene from Texas really was the thing. And I do get some non-Texans here and there, but that was the main thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a non-Texan, so that's very cool. I ask because, like, I like to see the inner workings of people's minds and intentions behind things. And for me, I just want to share the stories from people that I know travel. For you, now I understand like the intention behind it, and it's a very cool, selfless, and noble cause you're doing to like bridge all the different areas together and make it feel like one big Texas community,
Mhm.
and to get people to get to know these people that you see in the community better. And in that, I also hope that throughout this show, people are getting to know you better too. Maybe even just learning a little bit more about you in this episode, because when you go pro, people could be like, I followed that fucking dude's story, and
Oh yeah,
I think that's cool.
definitely the dream. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that does it for our show. So Joe, thank you again. And everybody tuning in, thank you so much. Be sure to go follow Joe at Joe Barrett 50 on Instagram. Also follow his show at Paintball Passport. What other guests would you like to see on the show? Be sure to leave a comment down below. While you're at it, hit that subscribe button. The show goes live weekly here on youtube.com/@inthepitspaintballpodcast. The recordings posted to YouTube, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify the next day. Quick shout out to my partner and sponsor tier subscribers on Patreon: FU Athletics, Get That Shot, Paintball Kumite, Compete, BEMRAPS, Hydra, XTPL Events, Mariachi Águilas de Oro, Podrunners Union, 71 Designs, and Bioworks IV. We will see you guys next Thursday for episode 100. And here is the grand reveal. We are going to be joined by none other than the president of the NXL himself, Mr. Tom Cole, is going to be coming on the show. So, and I think just with everything going on, all the rumors about Atlantic City, definitely going to be an interesting show. You do not want to miss it. We will see you all next week. So, Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. And I can't wait for that one. See you
Yes,
guys
sir.
later.